You're now tuned into the Real Exposure Show. I am your girl, Choc Babe. I have founder of the NFAC, Grandmaster Jay, here with me today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to do this interview with me.
I'm glad to be here. Matter of fact, I'm glad to be anywhere right about now when you stop and look at, all of the stuff that's going on in the world. But if I had the chance to sit down and talk with anybody, I would rather sit down and talk with my own folks first. So that's why you and I are going to sit here. We're going to chop it up for a couple minutes and maybe somebody will walk away learning something they didn't know. I hope that's the benefit of this exchange. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for being here. So I want to get right into it. Let's talk about your movement. Let's talk about the NFAC, what you stand for, and what's your mission.
Well, the NFAC was a response to the environment that was created under the past administration. 4 years of giving folks who actually had a problem with us just being Black folks the green light to be okay, to come on out, not hide it anymore, be all in our face with it like we back in the 60s and the 50s again. Come on out. You don't have to hide the fact that you want to lynch us again, that you want to shoot us down with impunity and that the justice system just basically blows us off. You wanted to bring that out in the open. You didn't want to be sneaky about it no more. You didn't have a problem telling us why we couldn't do regular stuff, why we were just trying to be regular human beings, why are we at the Starbucks, why are we in the Wendy's, why are we getting questioned all of a sudden? This atmosphere that was created, and everybody can sit around and point fingers, but what actually happened was there was a whole demographic of us that we thought them things was gone, long gone. So how are they coming back? You understand what I'm saying? So that let us further know that it was time for us to move past talking about. It was time to move past marching and waving signs and singing and forgiving. It was past that. It was time for us to do something that our predecessors did that put them on notice, that made them change laws, that made them back up, that made them remember that, listen, we are the most loving people in the world. But if you push us too far, everybody got a breaking point. And that's what actually manifested the NFAC in Brunswick, Georgia, for the Ahmaud Arbery killing, which was not by the police. It was just by white folks who thought that it was okay, for whatever reason they made up, to chase that boy down and then shoot him to death in the street with a shotgun, and nobody go to jail, and it ain't a no crime scene, no report, everybody backpatting, and this is the good old boy. No. We're not having that no more.
Right.
That's what set it off.
Okay,
because we already were dealing with a quarantine. Everybody lost everything. Some people still ain't got their jobs back. You got more people out of work right now than it was during the Great Depression. Plus, on top of that, we still being over-policed. Plus, on top of that, we still got to be victims of police brutality. Plus, on top of that, the disrespect that has extended to our sisters and our kids now. Come on, At some point, the talking had to stop.
Right.
So, watch this. We're not our predecessors. I'm going to say it. We're a lot more intelligent. We're a lot more financially stable than our predecessors because they were just coming out of Jim Crow. It's not their fault. They were just coming out of a situation. We've been out of the situation for 60 years. So getting organized in accordance with the Constitution. See, the white boys can do that all day. They can pick up guns and run up in the State House and run up in the Capitol and kill people and smear doo-doo on the walls and have a good old time. Everybody just go home. Nothing to see here. Move on. But let the brothers and sisters get together in accordance with that same Constitution to come out and say, look, y'all either fix this or it's going to be some situations.
Right.
That's all it is. The purpose of the NFAC was to defend Black people, not offend anybody. See, let me say this on your show before we get started. Every other group that's out there has a problem with us. All these other groups were simply made to fight us. But we are created to defend us.
Right.
Not to go to war with them and play 300. That's not our mentality. Additionally, to self-police ourselves. There's a model out there where you can police your own communities. There's proactive policing and there's reactive policing. Reactive policing is what we get right now. Remote control, reactive policing. Something happened in the community, you got to remotely call somebody who comes down and reacts to whatever they think is going on, and that ain't working. Community policing is proactive. You live in the community. We ain't talking about police officers. We talking about members of the gangs in the community and the people that got a vested interest in the community, self-policing themselves to head off stuff before it happens, being proactive as opposed to being reactive. Being a structure that was in place the same way the Panthers did it. And you see what happened to the Panthers. So we learned our lesson. Not to be infiltrated by COINTELPRO, not to overextend ourselves, and not to become a part of what's already going on. This got to be the next level in progression.
Mm-hmm.
So the NFAC was born and got the attention of everybody, including the U.S. government. They had to go dust off the old books. They're back. And they're in the same playbook right now. Ain't nothing changed. The only thing that's changed is our response.
Mm-hmm.
You see, they let us bring up the NFAC. They let us flex our might. They let us speak to power. And if you notice now, they clamping down on everybody. You see, anything to take out the black man or the black woman from standing unified and talking about liberation and getting reparations and trying to get some respect on us as a race, not just as individuals. They don't want to hear all that.
Mm-mm.
If we got to shut some white boys down to do it, we'll shut them down too. Notice everybody getting locked up now. But whose name don't you hear in any of that? The NFAC. The NFAC was the response to that environment and the beginning of a process and an organization that could be blueprinted in communities all around the country. So you don't have to wait for the bat light to go off and say, oh, come save me. No. That's why gun sales went up 58% last year. That's why all of a sudden, everybody understands what it means when we say just be black first.
Mm-hmm.
See, let me break something down to people. Just because you love your people doesn't mean you hate everybody else. You might not like what they did to you, but that doesn't mean you hate them because you love your own people. And our problem is we love everybody but ourselves. We are our own worst enemy. They don't have to do it. We do the work for them. And all they have to do is go to the same playbook. Watch this. Cut off a few of their heads, put them in darkness, scare them, be their savior, and they will continue to do what they've been doing since the day we enslaved them. And that's what they see a threat for. That's what NFAC began to represent. It was bigger than the biggest militia. It was bigger than carrying guns. It wasn't even about that. It was an exercise in us learning to work with us, to fix us, to protect us, to defend our children, us, because that's something that we still haven't learned to do. Malcolm X said, until we learn to love each other, we can't learn to love another race. So y'all stop bringing everybody to the cookout until we learn to get along as a family first. We ain't saying we're going to get over our differences. There's differences in your family and my family, but we all focus on one goal. And no matter who you are, if you're on the path with that goal, then you united, you my brother, you my sister. The NFAC is an international coalition now. We're in Africa, the UK, we're in Brazil, Argentina, all through the Mediterranean, all down through the Caribbean. Because this problem is not unique in the United States. What the pandemic did to society was put us on our knees. And when we got up, a lot of us just wanted to find a way to eat and not die from the virus. The last thing we wanted to see was flashback to 1957. That's what brought the NFAC into existence, and that's why it exists today.
Okay. You speak a lot about unification, liberation. History shows patterns of, basically vilifying, criminalizing, neutralizing, and destroying movements. We had a lot of great movements in history, from the Haitian Revolution, Marcus Garvey, the movement, the Black Panthers. What are some things that right now and today that you think that we can do that is basically help? We could take a look at the past and not make the mistakes of the past and keep moving forward.
I've said this many times. That's a great question. I've said this many times, is that history is not repeating itself. People are repeating history. Mm-hmm. There's a book called Brainwashed by Mr. Burrell that talks about the psychological chains and the colonization of the Black mind when we were invaded. It wasn't so much our gold and our bodies that they took. They colonized our minds. And to this day, even though we've been physically released from the plantation, even though we're not picking cotton and being sold, and there's certain things that can be done to us that's not against the law. Those days are gone. But what's still here are the mental chains. And what has happened is just what I thought would happen and what I said would happen when this movement started, which is why we're different. You don't just know your history. You have to learn from your history, both sides of the coin. And then from there, you draw lessons. The very first mistake that every movement keeps making, and people tend to act like it's something that's so alien to their ears. Like I just said, stop inviting everybody to the cookout. The very first thing the NFAC did was we declared that we're all Black, period. No exceptions. Has nothing to do with anybody else, has to only do with us. Then that takes us to our next issue. Our next issue is the same way they infiltrated every other movement, was people who look like us on the outside, but are not us on the inside. Examining what your agenda is and what your purpose is here is something that the NFAC repetitively does. That's why you see a lot of people that have to leave, because you're not here for the very same reasons. If you've ever read the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, he talks about before we can unify as a people globally, national, or even locally, the first thing we have to do is collectively agree that we all suffer from post-traumatic slave disorder. All of us need a little help. Some of us need group therapy. But at the end of the day, until we acknowledge that psychologically, we got to change some things. All the things that we keep saying we want every year after year. Oh, we want to retake back the dollar. We want to rebuild Black Wall Street. We want to claim our communities back. We want to bring back the nuclear. We want to. Well, guess what? People in hell want ice water too. But all this wanting without addressing the root problem is what they did to us mentally. And what you're watching today is that split. There are people right now who don't support a thing that I've said. Because mentally, they are still on the plantation. Mentally, they are still comfortable in Egypt. Mentally, we's never had it so good like we had it here. And most importantly, we built this place crowd. Well, we ain't trying to go nowhere. No, you did not build anything. You were enslaved to build this place. And being a slave is not what it is. Slavery is a verb. It's brutal. It's violent. It's ongoing every day. You were enslaved for 246 years and you built everything. So no, you didn't build anything. You was the unglorified help. And now the place is so infested with so many of them, you got the nerve to sit here and think that 12% of the population is going to take from the other 80-some% of the population. It's not going to happen. We have to have our own somewhere. Every other race has their own. We're the only race that keeps talking about what's ours and what we want to do, but we're still on the plantation.
Okay. So what separates your coalition from others?
Oh, wow. Let me add one last piece to give you something positive. Okay. The first thing that we need to do, since I didn't close out with that, was we first have to understand, not just understand our past, but how it's impacting our future and who's controlling the narrative. We have to tell our own story. This is supposed to be Black History Month. I don't know why everybody still want to call it just a month. It's every day, but it's interesting that they're still telling the same old stories. Okay, we really need to open our eyes as a people and look at the broader picture. It's okay to read about great Black kings and great Black warrior queens and hear about some of the, for instance, let's look at our history from the perspective of they're still digging up our ancestors and putting them on display in museum, which is to me overglorified grave robbery. That's cultural. And as a race, we're not saying anything. Those are the types of things we have to start having conversations where we get back to knowing who we are. That's the first thing. Second thing is this, is that we have to have a collective conversation that goes beyond the conversation. If we're going to have a conversation of how we rebuild our Black communities, our Black organization, our Black banks, our real estates, our Black education systems, our own farms, all of that stuff, there has to be a collective conversation where somehow we take the temperature of all of our people to find out what our top 5 priorities are. And we all agree to work on that in different lanes, like the lanes I just broke down. That process can get started today. People are in the mindset for that today. And last but not least, the last piece is this. And I guess this is going to sound so classic that everybody says it, but I actually understand what it means now. We have got to stop looking at each other as if it's our fault. Who we are, where we are in this walk is not our fault. It may be our lot, but it is our ability to change it and the opportunity we have right now that we may never get again. What separates the NFAC from all other organizations? I'm glad you asked that. Here's what separates us. The very first thing is, and this is no disrespect to any other existing organizations, gun clubs are not militias. Training organizations are not malicious. Any of the shooting galleries or the places you visit with a membership card, they're not malicious. That's the first difference. We are not a gun club. We are, in fact, a paramilitary militia, which means that we're structured like the military, which means we have a chain of command, which means we have missions and the whole 9 yards. We're not just a social club, so to speak. The other thing that differentiates us from, unless I can find somebody else, we are the only all Black by requirement organization of its type in existence. We were the third largest militia in the United States until they took off the head of the Proud Boys, found out he was an FBI informant for 6 years. So those guys don't rank anymore. So we've moved up to number 2. So we're pretty large. Other than that, I would say the only other thing that differentiates us is our mission. And our mission is, as I said it before, to defend the Black community, the Black nation, educate the Black nation on the proper use and a constitutional right to carry firearms and self-police our own communities. That's our mission. Nobody else has that specific mission without anything outside of it. The other thing that I would think separates us from all the others, and this is something that I don't know exactly how people are going to take it, but it's true, is that there are 2 types of people in our organization. There are those people who are victims of the system, and they want to do something about it. And they want to, they don't want to necessarily have to go off and throw their life away doing it. They want to do it in accordance with the law, or at least in a legally defensible posture to deal with the issues at hand. You got those people. The other people are members of, and this is on a, I don't want to use the word religious, because religious is a system of control on a spiritual level. There are those folks who share a common ideology with regards to who we are as a people, and that anything that is all melanin can only be of their particular points of view with regards to the tribes that we descend from, our history, who we was before we were slaves, and what it is our purpose, as is stated in a lot of holy books, of who we are. So there are folks who are there for their own belief reasons. They're not there just because they got shot at by the cops and they want to get back. There are people there who are in this because this is what their creator has purposed them to do. I don't make it a requirement that you have a certain belief. Anyone who meets all the other requirements can join, but I don't make folks, I don't differentiate. We can all achieve the same goal together, no matter what your belief system is.
Okay. How does one become a member? And is there a process? You spoke about, the psychological chains. So how do you make sure that you don't have the Judas coming into the organization and trying to destroy it? Is it a process that they have to go through or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
See, the beauty of the NFAC is, and I've heard people say this, they'll say, well, I like the organization, but I wish they had different leadership. Okay. As if they elected me. No, I was the first member of the NFAC. I was the first person to go to the front yard of the McMichaels for Ahmaud Arbery by myself. I didn't have no gang of people. I wasn't looking for a gang of people. And everybody saw that. And they said, that's what I've been thinking too. So the very first requirement in order to join the NFAC is you have to be able to tell us why. You can't just say, oh, I want to help my people. You got to go deeper than that, cousin. That's the very first thing that we're going to examine in your mental, is you have to tell us in writing why you want to join us. You have to give us some information about you so we can run an FBI background check on you to make sure that you're not prohibited from having weapons or being around weapons. Mm-hmm. You see, that's an open door for them to come in. And then if you get past that, then there's some more information where we'll begin to tell you what you need to do, to actually be brought on board and so forth. And if you get through all of that, then you're assigned to your local chapter. You don't just got to pick up this. You can't pick up the phone and say, I'm going to join because I'm in. No, you can't. No, you can't, because there's one last piece that I personally inject into this organization, and that's me. If I can't trust you, you don't have to worry about being a Judas, because you're not going to be a part of the organization. Point blank and simple. And that comes not just from me, but a consensus of the people that you interact with. All I'm going to do is support what they tell me and show me. And it's not, it's not one step and you're gone. We have a very, very, it's interesting, lenient system where we try to, we don't throw people away. You got to have a lot of nerve to be able to step up, strap up and stand, stay in the post. I appreciate that. But like you said, if you have a Judas, or if you have someone that's, they have their own agenda, it doesn't take long for us to sniff them out.
Good. That's good. Also, I like to talk about the Second Amendment and how important it is, because when you come from like the urban communities, a lot of people don't know their rights and things of that nature. So the first thing they do, they want to protect themselves. They don't know how to go about doing it. So they'll go do it the illegal way. So just let's speak about, because I'm a firm believer in, if you want to earn more, learn more. And information can change your situation. So I'm always trying to educate and give information and provide the platform with people like yourself that can educate people. So could you talk a little bit about the Second Amendment, talk about gun laws and the proper way to go about obtaining your gun license?
Okay, so before we get started, and people who are on here watching probably already know this, the gun laws are different in every state. Mm-hmm. They're not the same. The requirements to get a permit are different in every state, sometimes in different counties, from county to county. The requirements for you to begin to go out and to train with a weapon and so forth. I mean, you can go to a training range or something like that, and you can actually learn. But as far as the Second Amendment is concerned, let's take a step back. It's not really so much what it means right now, as far as folks want to arm themselves, which they can. Mm-hmm. It's, you have to ask yourself this question. Why did they write it in the first place? Think about it. Why did they find it important, even if it wasn't written for us? And that's a whole nother discussion. Okay. But why did they have to write it? And why did they make it number 2? Let's just go ahead and be real. Can we, as they say, keep it real? So I'm going to say what I want to say. And you ain't going to tell me what I can say. No, brother, I'm going to say what I want to say. And if you don't like it, I'm going to back it up with this. So what they're saying in First Amendment is your freedom of speech. That was supposed to make the country so great when they said they founded it because it was a place where they could be free and say what they wanted to say. And everybody said, oh, the United States is the only country you can go to and criticize the government and not have to worry about a knock in the middle of the night on your door and you disappear like you do in some of these other countries. That people don't realize that everybody doesn't have freedom of speech. So when they wrote this, they're saying you can say what you want to say. Y'all can get together and say it, or you can say it by yourself. And just to make sure, they threw in the gun next. So you arm yourself. And then nobody go, and notice they say you cannot abridge or restrict the First Amendment. And then it says you have the right to bear arms. Okay. Why do you have to tell me that it's a right for me to defend myself? That's not a right that you give me. See, rights can be taken away. You understand what I'm saying? I'm taking away, I'm suspending your rights. No. If you ever watch Wild Kingdom, when I was growing up, I used to watch Wild Kingdom. They always had like this, the lion was stalking his prey. Didn't no lawyer pop up and tell them what was right and what was wrong? The lion was going to attack. The other animal had a right to defend itself. That's life. But in this country, unless you want to fall victim to the legal system, which is already disproportionately stacked against people of melanin persuasion, you want to be familiar with the Second Amendment from the perspective that it is your right to bear arms in accordance with the laws of wherever you live. Mm-hmm. And that's where we get into this whole piece with, who can own a weapon and who can't own a weapon. There, again, the same book that I talked about earlier, Brainwashed by Tom Burrell, he talks about how they socialized Black people to look negatively upon weapons. Think about it. You see a white person picture depicted with a weapon, he's a patriot. You see a Black person depicted with a weapon, and he's a terrorist, or he's a hate group, he's a gang member. That's socialization. So the first thing that we have to do, and if you're interested in arming yourselves, is first you have to get over the stigmatism they put with black folks and guns. Just because we got guns ain't nothing wrong. I had 6 formations last year, all peaceful, all successful. You understand what I'm saying? All legally permittable, all with people with legalized semi-assault weapons, whatever you want to call it, but it's all legal. It was all legal. So there's no problem. Guns don't kill people. People who don't know what they're doing with guns and people who do know what they're doing with guns are the ones who kill people. So you got to know, who you're dealing with. But in this particular instance, first understand that can't nobody tell you that you can't have a weapon unless there's some legal reason of the system that you serve under that says you can't. Like I said in the very beginning, first thing we do is we screen you to make sure that you can be around weapons and that you can possess a weapon. Otherwise, the FBI gonna kick the door down and say, hey, you know what? You crooked, everybody crooked. You understand what I mean? And that's how they've infiltrated your group.
Mm-hmm.
Left a door open. That's the door you have to close. So first thing is, it is your right to bear arms. Now, if you decide, and it's different, 3 types of weapons. You're talking about shotguns, you're talking about rifles, you're talking about handguns. Now, remember, handguns, which are convenient and easy to have on your person, are also the last thing you want to have if you're hot-headed, because you're going to reach for it in a split second, mess around and shoot somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So the rules are a lot stricter on handguns than they are on rifles. Now, of course, they're about to change the law because Biden is in office, but semi-assault weapons, it wasn't really as strict as it's about to be, okay? And I wonder why. We could talk about that later too. But at the end of the day, it is your right to purchase a weapon. You have, as long as you don't, there's certain disqualifiers, and most of them are legal. One is psychological, that will prevent you from owning a weapon. Okay, but you can go out and purchase a weapon, learn to use that weapon, have somebody train you, or go to a facility where they train, learn how to use. Don't just have a gun in the house and then something happen, you ain't never used it before. No, y'all, no, that story is not going to end well. Okay, the same way that you take little Johnny or little Susie to cheerleading and football every Sunday, you ain't even up in church. The pastor asked about you, but you over there at practice every day. Take them to the shooting range.
Mm-hmm.
Teach them. Don't let them learn everything they learn about guns from watching movies that are designed to I was watching New Jack City and Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society, and that's how you learned about guns in the hood? No. You know what I'm saying? You want to take your kids out and want to teach them about weapons, make sure you learn about them yourself. Safety first, always, but at the end of the day, it is your right. Second Amendment gives you the right. Here's where it goes off the rails. It goes off the rails when Black people are over-policed. And it doesn't make a difference whether you know your rights or not. The person you're dealing with, if they have a preconceived mindset about you because they don't live in your neighborhood, remember, remote policing. They just coming down and they in this neighborhood that they have nothing to do with. It's high crime to them. You automatically a criminal just because you know your rights. Understand that you're going to run into people who don't care about your rights. Mm-hmm. But when you organize yourselves, when you present yourselves as more than one, because we don't have any problems when we come out. And yes, we always outnumber them, but we don't have any issues. We're not maced. We're not gassed. We're not hitting the head. Ain't nobody asking us for the registration of the weapon. No one asked us for the serial numbers. They don't do any of that. Because we too know our rights, but we have assembled ourselves and organized ourselves. So if you're one of those people who feels like, well, listen, maybe I need to be able to defend myself in my neighborhood, start with yourself first. Arm yourself legally. Now, in order to go and get your permit, like I said, the process is different in each state. But there's just a series of requirements where you're going to go. Of course, they're going to do a background check. You probably have to be fingerprinted or something like that. Give them some information. They're going to run you through the FBI. Woo, 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 woo. When you get done, they're going to tell you, come down and get your permit. And it's always from the sheriff's department or the court. So it's not like you can go, don't think you can go online and buy your permit. I've seen all kinds of scams. No. What they're going to do is set you up with a class that you're required to take. Everyone who gets a permit has to take a class. And I think it's like 80 hours. Sometimes they can do it in one day. But it teaches you a lot of things that you would assume you know about firearms that you really don't. That's why you have to take the class. They're going to certify you, get a certificate. You got to take that to the police station or to the court, to apply for your permit. As long as you ain't forbidden to have a weapon, They'll process it through. You come down there, and I'm gonna teach you something else. Your permit is attached to your license plate. When they pull you over, they know that you have a carry conceal because they ran your license plate. It's going to pop up. The question is, do you have the weapon on you? And in the case of Castile, he did, and they shot him anyway. But if you don't, it's still gonna show up on your license plate. So they don't have to ask you any questions. So it becomes attached to your license plate. And then I think they renew them so many years. It's different for different states. I would ask people to look into that. Let me add one last thing, because someone's gonna say, well, what about those of us who want to get our gun rights restored? So we can go out and get a permit so we can own a weapon so that, we can exercise our Second Amendment right. Well, it's two situations. It's different for each state. Some states, if you have one felony, then your rights are automatically restored once you've completed all your obligations to that, like no probation, you ain't got no more fines, and then it's maybe a time period, like a year, 2 years, 4 years, I don't know. But then you get your stuff restored automatically. Other states, they send you a letter that is your responsibility to file with the courts and say, hey, I got my letter saying that I'm good. Can I get my rights back? And sometimes getting your rights back might involve a pardon from the governor. So it's different for different cases. But those people can also get their Second Amendment rights back, the same way you can get your voting rights back. So when we're talking about the Second Amendment, the right to arm yourself, yes, the right to educate yourself, to organize yourselves, in accordance with the Constitution. See, that's where a lot of people go off the rails. They don't want to. They don't know where the guidelines are. They don't know where the guardrails are. You know what I mean? So, and then what'll happen is you have some law enforcement official who will prey on your ignorance. The last thing they do is they want to run into somebody who knows. Okay, that's a whole different conversation. So in this particular instance, if you're going to go out, and you're going to get a carry conceal, know the law. Know the law. And I saw a video the other day where the guy pulled the guy out the car because he was carrying concealed, and he was trying to tell the guy the law, and the guy said, nah, he didn't know he was a lawyer. He said, nah, that's not the law. And the cop said, yes, it is. They just passed it. And he called for his supervisor, and all these cops came for them to look in the book and realize that he was right. Realize, and the other cop was looking real stupid. You get what I mean? So if you're going to go out there, you're going to be in this game we're in right now, and I'm going to warn everybody. Now, I'm not going to warn you. I'm just going to give you some information. You can go look it up yourself. But our incoming president has a gun control platform that will make it virtually impossible for you to own an assault style weapon. And you can still own one, but it's going to be hella expensive. There will be a buyback program where they're going to ask you to sell your weapon back to them or put it in a big registry where they know everybody who got what, which right now is illegal under the Firearms Act. They're going to change the law. Remember, every time certain demographics start to put their guns up, they change the laws. They did the same thing with the Panthers when they marched on the State House. They changed the laws. So now they're bringing in this new agenda. So all I'm saying is if you're going to arm yourselves now, let's go ahead and get out there and get it. If you need the training, let's get it. There's no need to wait. There's no need to wait. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Now, what about having a gun in your home? Do you need a permit for that? Because you hear a lot of saying that you don't need a permit or a license to have a gun in the home. What are the facts behind that?
Again, that's different per state. You see, there's different types of states. Let me break it down. You have what we call constitutional carry states. You don't need nothing. You can have anything, anywhere. You can have a concealed. You don't need a permit for nothing. It's wild, wild west. There's some states like that. But then there are other states where they're very restrictive. I mean, look at the laws they just passed in the General Assembly in Virginia last week, where now they're making it so that if you live in certain municipalities, you can't own an assault style weapon. Forget about having it in the home. You can't have one, period. You understand what I mean? So it depends on your particular locality, what their attitude is toward guns. There are some places in the United States that are very pro-gun, and they'll pass the most lax laws like that's their insult back to the government. Okay, our people ain't gonna be restricted like that. Open carry states, the places where you see us do a lot of our marches, those are open carry states. Everybody can carry. It ain't just us. People in the crowd can carry. I went to a KKK rally they had in Dayton back in 2017. This was a KKK coming to Dayton to threaten the black folks, and they was bringing guns. And the governor went on TV and said, well, if they bring in guns, y'all can bring y'all too. It was the first time I ever went somewhere where every single person in the crowd, young, old, black, white, in a wheelchair, I don't care, had a gun. Everybody. And the KKK came out and saw all that heat. Well, okay. And they left. You understand what I'm saying? Right, because the whole crowd was like, go on, set it off. Everybody, even a homeless guy was sitting there like, set it off, set it off. It's open carry, and it's open carry. So you have states like that. So it depends on your state. States like New York City, it's almost impossible to get a gun. The process was so long and it's so drawn out. California,
I was about to say that.
you can't open carry there. Chicago, Illinois, can't see the places where there's high concentrations of our communities. The laws are so restrictive. That a lot of that's why we don't have a presence in certain cities. We can't, unless we do like what we're doing overseas in places like the UK where you can't own a gun anyway. Big shout out to Forever Force family, then the Zinga Garvey movement in the UK, and the new NFAC UK that was just stood up a couple of weeks ago. But they can have guns, but guns are not the only weapons. Okay, everybody show up with baseball bats. They just steal 3,000 baseball bats. Okay, we got something we want to talk about, right? We got some things we want to talk about. We got some things we want to talk about. You know what I mean? If everybody show up with rolling pins, we here. We organized. We got some things we want to talk about. That's the whole purpose of a militia. Let me touch base on that again. If you study history, and you talked about history, you'll find out that most political parties, the Democrats did it, the Republicans did it, they had their own militias. That if you didn't vote their way, they were sending the militia to tear up you and your house and your property to persuade you. Look up the red shirts. Look at what they did in Wilmington. They didn't like the outcome of a democratically elected government, so they called in their own militia who went in there and kicked the people out of office and burnt the place down and ran and took over. That's what militias are used for. They're supposed to assist the government in times of crisis. Our point is this, and I want to say this before I go. We're not left or right. We're not a politically driven organization. Our agenda, Black liberation, is not Democrat or Republican. It's not. And the media keeps trying to push it that way. You know what I mean? Like when all of this stuff happened at the Capitol, there was so many media calling like, so is the NFAC making preparations for what? You ain't got nothing to do with that.
Fight.
Right, that ain't our fight. We over here. Yeah, I'm getting some popcorns. I'm gonna be at the house. Okay, I'm gonna be on the remote control. I'm gonna be watching it on TV. We have nothing to do with y'all. Don't y'all feel like we're not the opposite of them? Okay, we would. And besides, if we had showed up out there, they still be collecting body bags off the front lawn because they would kill every last one of us. Everybody knows the hypocrisy is glaring. Yeah, glaring right now. So, but getting back to what you were saying, but yes, I also want folks to understand that exercising your rights goes beyond just owning weapons. There's a certain responsibility that goes along with it. And what I mean by that is, if you're one of those people that's always ready to fly off the handle, maybe mentally, a weapon is not something you should be thinking about right now. Yeah. Okay, you know what I mean? Because some of us, if you're more emotional than reasonable, then that type of responsibility is not to be taken lightly. And that's what I'll say. Even if you're training your kids, you have to teach them the responsibility of this. That's not something you take lightly. Look at what happened with the white boy that's missing, Kyle Rittenhouse, who's missing a $2 million bail, and he done killed 3 people, and now he can't find him. Now, if they had been me, I'd be on every cereal box, milk container. Have you seen this? Hypocrisy, and that's what we have to be aware of as we go through this season of talking about First Amendment rights and Second Amendment rights, is that you're still going to run into the wall of hypocrisy.
Okay. Well, any final words, anything that you want to clear up, any misconceptions about you, your movement that you would like to just let the people know?
I think that people need to be aware that we're talking about, this is Black History Month, and Black history is being made right in front of your face. The anniversary of Fred Hampton's assassination, which was 54 years ago, I'm sorry, was the same night that the feds came to arrest me, at the exact same time, in the exact same manner.
Mm.
Difference was they knew who they were coming to get, and they knew how much firepower I had. So they were very, 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 very cautious about trying to apprehend me. They used drones and robots and all types of stuff.
Mm.
There was no irony in the fact that they came on the anniversary of Fred Hampton to take down the leader of the largest Black militia that appeared to be inspiring people to be unified.
Yeah.
Then after that, to charge me with something so trivial, pointing a weapon at someone, as they said I did, which of course I know I didn't. But at the end of the day, the heavy-handedness of it, the suspending of my First Amendment rights. That's why we're pre-recording this. The suspending of my Second Amendment rights, the suspending of my freedom of travel. And I haven't been indicted. I've just been accused.
Mm-hmm.
Yet looking at the hypocrisy of what happened in Washington and how they let these folks do things we could never or would ever think about doing.
Mm-hmm.
And now the fact that I'm facing 2 court cases, federal and state, ironically enough, in the same place where I went to get transparency in the killing of Breonna Taylor. Now I'm under the very jurisdiction of the very attorney general that I pressured to be clean with the people about the killing of a Black woman that wasn't going to be ignored. And also the federal case. And people really don't seem to understand that this is actually happening. They're doing the same thing that you said before. Character assassination. Then they assassinate your finances by wrapping you up in the court system. Then they assassinate your freedom by incarcerating you. And then when they think no one else is thinking about you, they assassinate you physically. Mm-hmm. And they do that whenever someone starts to personify what J. Edgar Hoover said. America's worst nightmare is Black unity. And America's second worst nightmare is a Black charismatic male that can energize the Black nationalist movement. Because once that spark is lit, nothing will stop it, even if you take him out. And that's what's happening. So I need everybody right now to support and keep their eyes on. You're watching the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, and it's happening again right now. There are people who don't even have a clue of what they've done to your Black militia, what they've done to the movement right now. Mm-hmm. By silencing me. If you're not aware, please go. And there's a there's a GoFundMe site for my legal defense. If you all want to go check that out, it tells you the story of what's happening. Or you can do your research on the NFAC itself and read our history and see how we ended up in this position. And you'll see how similar it is to what they did to Fred Hampton. They're doing the same thing to us again. They didn't even change the playbook. And some of us are falling for it. Hook, line, and sinker. And that's the real exposure right there. That's all I got for you. I'm so glad you had me.
Well, thank you so much for taking this time out to speak with us. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to interviewing you in the future. And I hope everything goes well with your case. And I didn't come with the petty.
You take care of yourself. So it's been a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you again. Peace and shalom to you.
All right.